Hey Freedom Family, this is Mark, and I am so glad that you're here with us today. Today we're going to tackle a tough subject. The subject is grief and loss, how to deal with grief and loss in your life. So let's get started, shall we? So as I was saying, we're going to deal with grief and loss today. And so this is going to be, honestly, for me, a really challenging one. And we'll figure that out in a moment. But hey, if this content matters to you, if this is something that is resonating with you, could you do me a favor? Could you subscribe? Could you hit that like button and the notification as well? And honestly, like no other, if you know somebody who's dealing with grief and loss, I'm not an expert in it. I just walked through it and I'm going to share that with you. Could you share that with somebody that you know? I'm hoping that this content matters to you, and the honest truth is, just to be totally honest, I'm honestly doing this for me as well. So thank you for allowing me to do that. So grief and loss, it's an interesting thing. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, I was struck by this Father's Day. If you're listening to this, watching this in the real time, Father's Day is actually tomorrow. And so 2 weeks ago, I realized, probably for the first time in a few weeks, that this was the first Father's Day that I was going to have without my father. And I'm an older man, and so, I've got a family and kids, and life is, pretty well developed and good in our household. But I still, at my age, feel the loss of my dad in a way that is profound sometimes. And so for me, walking into Father's Day is really walking into the first time that I don't have a card that I'm going to send, or a phone call that I'm going to give, or a gift that I'm going to provide for my dad. And he died 11 months ago. Next month it'll be a year. And so as I walk through this, I wonder, what's it going to look like the first time, the first one that I've had without my dad? And maybe somebody here is dealing with that as well. You've lost somebody a while ago. Maybe it's been years, and maybe you've lost somebody 2 weeks ago, and it's so super fresh on your heart and so suffocating in your emotions. I just need you to know this, above all else, that you're not alone. That you're not the only one that's gone through it, and that you can survive this journey called grief and loss. It's awkward sometimes, isn't it? If you've lost somebody and you've ever been there. I remember a few weeks ago thinking about calling my family, and I'm thinking, man, I need to call mom and dad, and realizing that it's just mom now. Dad's not there anymore. It was something I used to do weekly, right? Those opportunities and those routines you have to be with your family, that all of a sudden there's a new normal in your life. And what I come to realize, not just with them, but even when we lost our twins, was this: when you suffer grief and loss, it feels like you've got a hole in your life that isn't filled anymore. That a part of you is gone, a part of what you know as your normal and the existence and relationships isn't there anymore. And sometimes there's just this regret, the things that, could have been. For my father, it's the fact that 2 weeks before he passed, I was on a phone call with my mom and waiting for him, but he was taking a while in the restroom. He's an older gentleman, and I said, hey, I'll just talk to him next week, and next week never came. And so we wrestle with that, don't we? We wrestle with regret, and the same thing that happened with our twins. Sometimes it's the regret of things that we could have done in the moment. Sometimes it's the things that we'll never get an opportunity to. Before my daughter, who's 21, was born, we were expecting twins, and at 5.5 months, we lost them. And we buried them, and we moved forward with our lives, but they moved forward with us. And so one of the things that happens in grief and loss, and if you're dealing with this, it's normal, it's the feeling of regret. With my dad and the phone call, it's those missed opportunities of, if I only knew. And with our daughters, it's, you wrestle with it afterwards, and you think these things like, one of the things that it drove me crazy was knowing that we named our daughters. We knew who they were. We had plans for them, And sometimes in grief and loss, you expect life to just go on in the way that you expected and planned it to. And for them it was, life was just going to happen. My wife gets pregnant, people get pregnant, and they just have children, not ever expecting that it actually wouldn't come to pass. So the plans that we had and the conversations of, I wonder which twin is going to like which parent and which one is going to be kind of the one that's closest to you and closest to me. These things that you think about because you never expect to be confronted by loss. So regret is kind of part of the process of grieving and losing and moving forward. And it's those milestones, right? The times in the future, like with my dad and Father's Day and knowing that this event will happen every year. And every year I'll be confronted with something that's not there that I was hoping would be. With our twins, I remember we had a song that was popular at the time that we used at the funeral, and I remember my wife for weeks and months after, a horrible decision to pick a popular song because it was on the radio often, and I remember being in our home and hearing it come on the radio, and we would just weep together for weeks afterwards. It was a song called Tears in Heaven. And sometimes the milestone isn't the event and the day and the calendar, but there's this reminder, walking into the room, seeing an outfit, going to a place that was our place, or this was a memory that we had, and kind of dealing with those milestone moments. There's just so much wrapped into it, isn't there? And I'm speaking specifically to you, the people, the person who's dealing with it, who's trying to figure out, hey, how does my life move on from this place? There's lots of people that are a lot smarter than me, and one of the things that they talk about is this. It's the stages of grief. And maybe you're in the middle of that. The first stage is disbelief. It's man, this couldn't have happened. I remember waking up after our twins passed and just believing that it wasn't real, which is the second stage. It's denial. No, I heard that wrong, or that was just a dream. It couldn't have been that way. The third stage is bargaining, just trying to kind of bargain your way out of the event that happened in your life. And then the next stage is guilt, like me and that feeling with my dad, and maybe you with the things you're going through. And stage after that is anger. And I dealt with a lot of that. Not necessarily with my dad, but with the twins, and feeling like they were taken from me, they were stolen from our lives. The next stage after that is depression, just this weight and this darkness, and maybe you're going through that, and again, I just need to tell you, you're not alone. And then the last stage is acceptance. Finally understanding, no, this is what my life is going to look like moving forward with grief, with loss, with not having that person in my life any longer, that hole that's in the middle of you that you feel like can't be filled. And sometimes all of these emotions come in different places. Sometimes you're feeling guilty, and then you're feeling angry, and you're even angry at the person who you've lost because they left you, and how could they do that? Not reasonable, and then you feel guilty that you're angry, and it's just this whirlwind of emotions that you sometimes can't seem to be able to control. But it's a process, and it's okay where you're at. With myself, I'm a person of faith. I believe that there's a heaven and that my Father's there. And that does bring comfort, but it doesn't bring it all. Because not dealing with the fact that they're here is part of the challenge. It's understanding that, yes, they are in heaven, but right now I'm just feeling that they're not here where I'd like them to be. And so we deal with these stages of loss, and we deal with all the things that were happening. And so I just need to let you know something, again, for the third time. You're not alone. Whatever stage you're in, wherever you're at in your life, it's okay to be there. It's actually appropriate to be there and to allow yourself to be in that place, whether it's angry, whether it's denial, whether it's guilt, whatever the stage is that you're in. It's okay to be where you're at. And so in that, I want to give you three things that you can take with you, three things that will help you to understand how I can kind of navigate it. There's no magic bullet. There's no wand I can sprinkle magic fairy dust over you and make all of the pain go away and make it all right. But I'm hoping to give you at least something that you can take with you, a nugget to walk in today. And the first one is this. One thing I learned from our time was don't hide from the people who can comfort you. Not really with my father, but when we lost our twins, I really hid from everybody. There was just this profound feeling of vulnerability and hurt on the inside and even on the outside where I didn't want to see anybody. I didn't want to go to work and you have your time away from there as well. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to hear any platitudes or anybody telling me, hey, you know, all things are going to work out. It'll get better over time, because at the time I didn't care. But one thing I found was there was people that stayed in our lives and were there to comfort us. And I just want to tell you this. Don't hide from the people who can comfort you. While it feels dark and depressing and you don't want to be around anybody, be around somebody. One of the most profound gifts we can have is somebody who can help carry the pain with us, to sit with us when we cry, not giving us excuses or reasons or understands or I knows, but really just sitting there with us. Allow yourself to be comforted by somebody who's around you. The second one is this. Give grace to the people who hide from you. One thing that happened in every loss that I had was there were people who just don't know how to deal with it. They don't know, they feel inadequate to say anything, to do anything, to be a part of your grief, because it's not that they don't care, it's just that they don't know what to do. And in that place, they choose not to show up. Could you give grace to those people? They were certainly there for me, and maybe they're there for you as well. They don't know what to say, and in giving grace, you give them the opportunity to just be them and to not give yourself another level of issue to deal with. You've got enough on your plate. The third one is this. Would you please give yourself permission to be where you're at? Whether it's angry, whether it's disbelief, whether it's denial, whether you want to throw it away and not even deal with it at all, or somewhere in between, would you please give yourself grace to be where you're at? It's okay where you're at. It's appropriate where you're at. It's your mind, your heart, your will, your feelings, your emotions trying to deal with something that is overwhelming. And so where you're at is absolutely where you're supposed to be. The guilt that you shouldn't feel is feeling guilty about what you're feeling. Be okay with yourself. Be good to yourself. I would even say, going a step further, check in with yourself. Say, hey, where am I at today? What emotion do I need to walk through, and who can help me do it? And the last thing I want to give you is this. At some point, I really want to encourage you in this to make what I consider to be the bravest decision you can make. And that's the decision to move forward. I'm not saying, and I wouldn't want you to run through the grief or act like it's not there. I'm not saying that, but what I will tell you is this: at some point, make this decision that says, I'm willing to move forward in my life. When you feel it's right, you'll know the time, but I know this about you. You're not going to leave their memory behind. You don't have to feel guilty that I'll forget them if I don't continue to walk in this. You absolutely will. Their memories and the treasured moments that you've had with them will be able to walk forward with you. But in moving forward, you can move out of grief and loss like I have, and I'm sure you have, and many of us have in many ways, into a life that's healthy, different, but a life that's free, and the one that you're called to. And my name is Mark. This is _Freedom for Life _ you know the channel that you're on, and I'm so glad you're part of the Freedom family. This is important, and all of the subjects we have, we believe, are part of what we desire to give people in doing this and moving them from where they're at to where they're called and created to be. Giving you the tools, the truths, and the knowledge, and in this case, sometimes the comfort of coming alongside so that you can move forward in your life from where you're at, whatever that looks like today, to where you're called and created to be, because you are honestly called and created to not live in this grief and this weight any longer. to move forward in it, and we're here to be a part of that with you. Last thing I want to tell you as well is this, not just subscribing and liking and hitting the notification, all of those are great, but if you're walking through this journey and you want to just be able to share it, man, put it in the comments below. I read all of those, and we would love to be a part of that journey with you. And if it's just something that gets it off of your chest, so you could just let somebody else know, you don't have anybody you feel like you can talk to, but you want to share it somewhere, put it down there. We're family, and we want to walk together as family. Again, so glad to be with you, Freedom Family, and we will talk at you again next week.